do we have our next call in for this stream? I know we are going, we're supposed to be going live at 1 p.m. I don't like doxing the guests too frequently. There we go.
Hey,
Am
I on? Good to see you guys.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's great to have you, Chrisman. I don't know why I messaged you yesterday, or it was maybe the day before, but I was just like, dude, you got to come on. John and I are dads. You're building products that our children will ultimately use. I don't know if they're quite old enough yet, but I've got a bunch of buddies that are on Synthesis for their kids and have said great things. So I wanted to have you on.
Let's start with just a high-level intro, who you are, what your company does, set us up for the viewers, and then we'll just ask a bunch of questions.
Yeah. I think, by the way, it was like 9 or 10 p.m. Last night that you messaged me. So yeah, definitely. Thanks for the advance notice.
Yeah,
but yeah, happy to come on. I was maybe, in a similar position to you guys. Like 5 years ago, my oldest son was 2. I went down to visit the school at SpaceX that Elon had created for his own kids. He hired a teacher out of the fancy private school in LA and started his own school at SpaceX. And the guy he hired, Josh Don, became a friend of mine. And we ended up starting a company together to kind of scale up the best parts of that school. So we started during COVID. The initial product was this thing that really captured my imagination. I went to the school, which I was at a education company called Class Dojo, which went from $0 to $1 billion. I was the first employee there, and what they did at the SpaceX school looked a lot like what we were doing to build that company. The kids were just working together to solve problems in the form of games, and so we took that approach. Put that on the internet and signed up kids from all around the world. It kind of took off. So that was our initial product. And now, we have built an AI math tutor that I think is taken off pretty well, and I think is going to be a major part of every kid's education in the future. Company's called Synthesis, that's where we are.
Yeah, so right now you have the subscription. What does Synthesis look like long term? Starting digital makes a lot of sense, but over time, is there desire to kind of almost verticalize and go into the real world, or what does that look like?
I don't know about going into the real world. I think there've been some Silicon Valley startups that have been really well funded that tried to do the software piece and the real world piece at the same time. I think it's really hard to pull off both. Like if you're going into the real world for schools, you're doing like a real estate play essentially. I think when it comes to learning, math, science, engineering, the fundamentals, this is information. And so information can be transmitted through computers in a lot of ways, better than a human can do it. And so I think if we want to reach 1 billion kids, then, it makes sense to go vertical, but within, software, like things that can be delivered purely software. Never say never, because it is attractive to, the idea of like opening up physical in-person schools. If we did something like that, we'd probably do something like an academy. I always admire the European soccer clubs. What they do is they'll have an academy attached to all their professional teams, and they'll bring kids in at like age 6 or 8. There's a guy who's a star now for Barcelona that they brought in at 8 years old, and now he's like 18, and he's amazing. I think if you really want like incredible performance, then you should do that kind of like focus on the elite. So we might do one of those in like every city.
We talked about
the kids with the most potential. Yeah.
We talked about a Teal Fellowship for middle schoolers, just like you just go further downstream, get the middle, you could basically be that guy of getting the middle schooler to like drop out of their like regular, or elementary school and be like, come to the Synthesis Institution Academy,
walk in,
and you'll be building
That's
rockets.
Exactly what if we do go in person, that's what we're going to do. Okay, I think that'll just make a lot of people upset, but I think it's actually the right thing to do. Like I think you can identify kids who have potential like engineering talent pretty early, and if you develop that, this is what they do for sports. And so like if we're looking at people who can actually advance civilization, we should have something that's at least as serious as what we do for sports.
What is 10 years from now, what is sort of K through 12 going to look like? My sort of personal experience with school, was interesting. I started at a Waldorf school. That was like my earliest memories of school. I think I benefited a lot from it, but they didn't really teach me to read until I was in the 3rd grade. And I was like conscious enough to complain to my parents and be like, Mom and Dad, like I want to learn to read like the other kids, like, you know. So I ended up going to a regular elementary school. And then by high school, my father was actually a math teacher at my high school. And I hated high school so much that I like graduated early. So like and then by college, I was just like focused on startup stuff. So I didn't feel like I had a great experience, with my education. How much better can it be? And sort of what's your broader vision? Obviously synthesis can be a big part of, a child, and a kid's education, but you know, what does the full stack look like in the future?
Yeah. That's funny. I also had a bad experience with my education, and it's I got like psyoped into devoting the rest of my life to changing the whole system because I hated it so much. So maybe it's similar to you in that regard. I think the big problem is you start with this original elite education is with one-on-one tutors. And I don't know, but I don't think it was like 8 hours a day plus homework with one-on-one tutors. Like I think you can
Yep.
learn a lot more efficiently than that. Then you had like the one-room schoolhouses, which again were like kids are like working on the farm, and then they come to the schoolhouse, a couple hours a day, maybe a couple times a week, and that's it. And then all the parents go to work, and the school day expands. And instead of just sticking to that, like, well, we'll teach a little bit, and then we'll kind of have fun for the rest of the day, they just expanded the teaching to make it somehow encompass all the hours from like 8 to 3, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and homework. And I think what we're going to see, I think AI tutors are going to drive this. I think you could actually learn 20 to 30x faster. I don't think there's going to be a need for any homework. I think kids are just going to use AI tutors to learn the fundamentals and hopefully, a lot beyond that, or what their interests are. My hope is the rest of the day is spent in ways that we can't imagine. Like there's just like in your life, there's an infinite number of things you can do and ways you can spend your time. And the same is true of kids. So we should spend a little bit of time teaching them the fundamentals so that they can have good ideas and find what they're interested in. And then I don't know what they should be doing. My kids go to like a charter school 2 days a week where they build bridges, they do school plays, they do all these kind of things that you're not going to do with, it's not just software, and like it's not just reading. And so I'd love to see a lot more of that. Our goal is like be the partner with every in-person school that does that. And hopefully
Yep.
there's a lot of just local creativity and exploration, right? Because kids have a tough job. They have to figure out what they want to do in life, and it's a hard problem in the modern world. It's hard to say like I want to be a doctor, or I want to be something specific like that, because careers get more and more creative. And so I think it's important for kids to have that time to explore.
Can you take me on a little tour of where the government's doing things that are great for education of the next generation, where things could be improved, how charter schools fit into that, how public funding fits into that? Just kind of like, what's your world model for, public-private partnership in educating the next generation?
There's some really exciting stuff going on now, which I don't know if you guys have had Ryan Delt from Primer on, but he's done some work in like kind of lobbying governments in Florida for increased school choice, which is like, so I think a lot of people don't know. In California, for example, it costs like $20,000 a year to put a kid through the public school system, which is just like an extreme amount of money. And that's a little bit higher than the national average, but not by much. And so what a lot of states are trying to do is say, you can take that money with you and go choose a different school. And so that creates like the government, whether it's usually like a local government, collecting taxes, paying for the education. But then there's this fierce competition, right? Like somebody can open up a school right next door. Bad schools can fail, bad teachers, bad principals can go out of business. And there's going to be a lot more creativity in that regard. I think that's maybe one of the most exciting things that government can do, because I think, then you would be as well served by education as people are served by like grocery stores. And they'll just be, kind of wild, like cutthroat competition and people trying to do interesting things to attract students and get results. So I think that's one place where the government can do something really great, just by letting bringing this like kind of consumer mentality into what's typically been a government monopoly. So schools could get, you'd be as well served as grocery stores as opposed to what it is now, which is like the DMV, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Does all K through 12 education over time start to look more and more like a video game? Because like one concern I have right now is that kids, when they're out of school, they're doing Roblox, they're watching TikToks, and then you put them in a classroom or you give them homework that's sort of built around this sort of old style philosophy around learning, which is like, writing things down and here's this, textbook and we're going to read a chapter out of it or things like that. To me, it seems like kind of an impossible uphill battle to try to get a kid to pay attention to that when outside of class or even on their phone in the classroom, they have this sort of consistent, really intense stimulation. So in order to compete, does education need to start looking more like what's on their phone in their sort of leisure time, or how do you think about that?
I think those are, I know this like on people's minds. I think they're less related than people think. I think, TikTok and these things are addicting. But also school is just terrible. Like it was terrible when we were kids and we didn't have TikTok.
Yeah.
Right. So I think regardless of what's going on in the rest of the world, you want to make the tools for learning as effective and as engaging as possible. It's a really tight balance that you have to strike when you're building products. Like for us, there's things like Duolingo, which famously, it's maybe really good at getting their early retention and engagement, but hardly anybody knows someone who's learned a language from Duolingo. So they kind of focus all the way on the engagement and gamification and not so much on the effectiveness. And then, you can go the other way where it's like, well, theoretically, if kids would spend a lot of time on this, they would learn, but they won't do it. And I think the right products, it's going to be, just a balance of those kind of things. And I think if you get it right, something a lot of people miss is kids, they want to learn. When you really learn something, you grok a new idea, it makes you more powerful and you can feel that. And I think it's especially true in math, but I think it's true in all subjects. If you want them to learn something, it's because you're trying to make them more powerful. I think what a lot of teachers do is say, well, this will become useful to get to the next level of school. And that's not terribly motivating. What we try to do is just show you these ideas make you a more powerful thinker in the moment. And I think kids are pretty motivated. They're pretty motivated by that. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Last question I really have today, and would love to have you back on in the future, just as this sort of industry develops. But we had talked before when the Humane AI pin came out. I think everybody that was intelligent in the tech industry generally looked at it and said, this is not going to replace my phone because it does a lot of the same things. It doesn't necessarily do them better. But our reaction at the time was that this is not going to replace my phone, but maybe this is a solution that my kid would use, where like I want like location tracking and I want, them to be able to easily call me, but I don't want them to be on a screen. Have you thought, and so as like all these AI pins sort of evolved, there was the Rabbit, there was Humane, there were some others. My immediate thought was maybe they're focused on the wrong user type. Maybe there's a market for this with kids who, if you gave them something that they could ask any question in the world to and was sort of like this sort of companion, maybe that could be cool. Have you guys thought at all about sort of hardware experiences? I know you're very focused on delivering these sort of digital experiences, but is that, ever been even a conversation?
We haven't talked about it at all. I mean, like my kids have like it's not Apple Watch, but it's like a knockoff like watch brand that like tracks it. Like, they can talk to you and that kind of stuff. And I assume, they'll be able to connect to the internet and use AI for questions and that kind of thing. I think, I think like for learning, screens are like extraordinarily powerful. Like you can simulate almost anything on a screen, and that's like underrated. I think people like don't realize how amazing that is. There's a lot of Luddites and who are like, there's just something about learning on paper, like reading a book on paper, and like I just don't agree with any of that at all. I just think it's like information. The information kind of flows. You can kind of do anything on a screen. So yeah, we haven't. We haven't talked about doing anything in hardware yet. One kind of crazy idea I have is because a lot of people do homeschooling now. A lot of I've become close with some people who are fairly prominent who do homeschooling, and I like the idea for my kids as well of having like a booth with like a screen and speakers and just something to like isolate the outside world where
Yeah.
you've got the computer in it and you're going to go in there. You're going to go in this booth, which seems kind of dystopian, but it's going to be for like an
Put 'em
hour and
in
a
the
half a
cage.
day, right?
Yeah.
Like
Lock the door.
turn everything else. Yeah. It should have like a time lock on it, of course.
Yeah.
You know,
like,
you have
like
to
electric
complete
shocks
the
if they're not
lesson
focused.
to get out.
Well, last question for me. Let me flip that around. I know a lot of parents are obviously, you know, they want their kids to be accelerated in STEM and math, but there is the other side of like socialization, and there's a big question. Like, you know, Tyler Cowen's written about this, how maybe in the future intelligence is too cheap to meter. The real value is in connections. We like to joke that we're trying to be golden retrievers, be very friendly, attractive, and dumb. Because intelligence is going to be too cheap to meter. The AI can do the rocket science for me. But, you know, if I'm a friend that you want to hang out with and you want to, you know, chop it up with, we're going to have a great time. So, I mean, seriously, as a parent, like I think a lot of parents do even worry even more about their kids. Like, hey, it's okay if you're falling behind in math just a little bit, as long as you're getting socialized and becoming like an upstanding member of society. And so do you see AI tutors or AI calibration being able to communicate with a child and understand, hey, they're being a little antisocial or something like that in a way that a teacher could, or maybe just an augmented or an additional layer there to see, hey, this kid is, you know, actually engaging at a very, you know, mature level, which is great. These are good signs. We want to continue this pattern of behavior.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I think parents are correct to worry more about social skills, especially from a young age. How old are you guys' kids? They're like quite
Turning
young?
4, and then I have twin boys who are 6 months.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
3 and 8 months.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So yeah, you're in that age now where like the social skills matter. I think up to like age 7.
Yeah.
It's like close relationships with the family and just try to spend as much time with them as you can.
Makes sense.
And be around and like reading faces. I actually think it's a mistake. We don't like actively recruit customers below age 7 because if you think about how much processing it takes to learn how to operate in the social world and read faces, I think you just want to leave kids' brains like open to basically spending all their resources doing that. Because if you get it, it's like speaking a language. You get that by like age 4 to 7. Then in some ways, you're set for life because you're going to be able to like fit in with groups. And I think that's extraordinarily important. We kind of, and when it comes to education, I think I don't see that the AIs are going to be able to do our thinking for us. I mean, that's like a totally different world. It doesn't look to me like we're on the path to getting that. I think LMs are really cool. I think you're going to want your kids to be smart and knowledgeable and able to think as an individual, and also have those social skills to work with other people and solve problems together, which is humanity's way of super intelligence, right? It's like being able to work together in groups. So this is actually mirrors the structure of the company. Now the AI tutor is like the leading edge of the product, but then we have synthesis teams where you put kids in teams, small groups to work together in solving problems. They're like video games, but they're not shooters or race games. They're like complex problems where you have to argue and decide what action you want to take under conditions of uncertainty, figure out what you got wrong and make the course corrections. And it's like meta problem solving skills. So I think if you want like these outgoing, sociable engineers, people who can do both sides of their brain. Now, I think we can do that, right? I think, of course, people lean one way or the other, but I think we can get people up to like a really good standard on both of those. And then that's just going to make us able to solve more problems and advance the civilization. So that's how I'd look at it if I was a parent anyway. Work on the social skills first. And
that's a fantastic vision for the future. I'm very optimistic.
I have one last question. Sure. Miss Rachel on YouTube, very popular. Little controversial. Do you have any under the radar creators on YouTube that just make my wife is very good about having like extremely limited just like screen time. We don't do iPads in public or at home. Planes are maybe the one condition. Sure. So if I'm taking my kids on a plane, is there a YouTube creator that you recommend, or are you just like, no, put them on, give them their AI tutor, and that's that?
No, I mean, at your kid's age, I think the Daniel the Tiger like PBS series is really good. If you guys know that one,
Alpha.
I don't know.
This is Alpha.
Yeah,
this is the real Alpha.
That one's great. That it like teaches them little. It's like I think it's like the successor to Mr. Rogers. I think he's like made by like the same people. So it's got like little lessons and it's animated. It's okay for them to watch. Your kids watch Bluey?
Oh yeah.
Have you ever seen Bluey?
I love Bluey.
Bluey's great. So that's what we would do when they were on planes and little kids like that. I would. Yeah. I haven't seen. I've got 4 of my own, and just having seen the. I think YouTube is quite bad, and it seems to push them into the YouTube shorts, which are just terrible. And,
really bad.
Even my like 5-year-old recognizes like this is bad. I shouldn't be watching this. Yeah. What's that?
Yeah, we were just agreeing the short form is like slop, and you should avoid it at all costs, no matter what age you are, basically.
Except ours.
Yeah. You should definitely watch clips of this because we will be clipping this interview and posting it out, and you should definitely watch these shorts because they're educational. But
short clips on X are great. They're
different. Yeah. But I'm sure if you swipe up on this on X, you're going to get some really Japanese stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, this was an awesome interview. Thank you so much. We'll have to have you back soon. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk soon.
All right. Cheers, guys.